All right, ready for a deep dive today. We're going to unpack some fascinating information about endometriosis. And, thanks for sending in all those sources. It's clearly a topic that's important to you and to so many people out there. So let's get right into it.
Sounds good.
It's interesting. When you hear about endometriosis, it's often described in this kind of, clinical way, right? Like tissue similar to the lining of the uterus growing outside of it.
Yeah, very textbook.
Right. But, what does that even actually mean for someone who might be dealing with this? So imagine this. The lining of your uterus, which is supposed to be temporary, decides to take up residence, outside the uterus. We're talking ovaries, fallopian tubes.
Even on the bowels sometimes.
Exactly. Not exactly ideal real estate, right?
Not at all. And that's where things get really complicated and painful, unfortunately. Because even though this tissue is misplaced, it still acts like it's supposed to during your menstrual cycle. It thickens, breaks down, tries to shed,
Yeah.
but there's nowhere for it to go.
It's like your body is, stuck in this loop it can't escape.
Exactly. And that's what leads to the inflammation, the pain, and potentially even problems with fertility, which we can get into more later.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of loops, one of the potential causes of all this is something called retrograde menstruation. Have you ever heard of that?
Oh, absolutely. It's essentially like menstrual flow going in reverse. So instead of everything heading out as it should, some menstrual blood flows back up the fallopian tubes and into the pelvis. And sometimes it carries endometrial cells with it.
Okay, so it's like backflow.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And get this, studies suggest this might be happening in up to 90% of women.
90%. Wow, that's way more common than I realized.
Right. So while not everyone who experiences this retrograde menstruation develops endometriosis, it definitely seems to be a contributing factor.
Fascinating. So we've got this potential backflow situation, but then our sources also pointed to the immune system, or rather its potential dysfunction, as another player in this whole mystery.
Yeah, it's kind of like this. Imagine your immune system, your body's defense system, is supposed to recognize things that don't belong and clear them out.
Right, it's like the body's security guard.
Exactly. But with endometriosis, it's like the security guard is, I don't know, taking a nap or something.
Right.
Because it's not recognizing this misplaced tissue as a problem, and so it allows it to grow and do its thing.
So it's almost like the body is kind of, in a way, attacking itself.
In a way, yeah. It's definitely a case of mistaken identity, let's say.
Wow. Okay, so we've got potential backflow, we've got a sleepy immune system. Anything else fueling this endometriosis fire?
Well, we can't forget about hormones. Your source is really spot on in pointing out that endometriosis is what we call estrogen dependent, meaning that estrogen actually fuels the growth of this misplaced tissue. So this is a huge piece of the puzzle because it explains why a lot of treatments focus on managing estrogen levels.
That makes a lot of sense. But it also makes you wonder, with puberty, pregnancy, menopause, all these big hormonal shifts that happen throughout a woman's life, how does that impact endometriosis?
Right. That's a really important point, and it's something to definitely keep in mind.
For sure. But for now, let's maybe shift gears a bit and talk about what we can actually do about it, in terms of day-to-day living. And your sources had some really, I thought, empowering information about the role of diet and lifestyle.
Absolutely. And that's what's so encouraging, right? While there's no one-size-fits-all cure, there are things you can do to manage the symptoms and potentially even slow the progression of endometriosis.
Totally. It's about taking control of what you can control, right?
Exactly.
So one thing that really jumped out at me was the emphasis on anti-inflammatory foods.
Of course, yeah.
It's like fighting fire with, well, not fire, but delicious, colorful food. Think vibrant veggies, bell peppers, spinach, kale, all those good things.
Berries. Don't forget berries.
Yes, berries. And fatty fish like salmon, right? All those things we know are good for us, but maybe don't always prioritize.
It's so true. And, your sources specifically mentioned omega-3 fatty acids, which you find in things like salmon and chia seeds, as being really beneficial for managing inflammation.
So swapping that burger and fries for a salmon salad with a sprinkle of chia seeds could actually make a difference. I'm seeing a pattern here.
Right. Small changes can make a big difference over time. And on that note, don't underestimate the power of simply reducing processed foods, sugary drinks, unhealthy fats. All of those things can contribute to inflammation and potentially even mess with those estrogen levels we were talking about earlier.
Wow, it really is all connected, isn't it?
It really is. It's all about that holistic view,
And it's not just about what we eat, right? The sources also talked a lot about lifestyle changes.
For sure. Managing stress, for example. When you're stressed, your body releases hormones that can actually worsen inflammation. So, finding healthy ways to manage stress, like exercise, yoga, meditation,
Even just like going for a walk in nature.
exactly, all helps. And also, maintaining a healthy weight can have a really positive impact on hormone balance as well.
It's like a domino effect.
Right.
One thing leads to another, which leads to another. And
Exactly.
so we covered a lot of ground here today, from rogue menstrual flow to the power of a good salad. Any final thoughts?
Well, I guess the main takeaway for me is this.
Mm.
While the causes of endometriosis are complex and we don't have all the answers, there's still so much you can do to take control of your health. And knowledge, as they say, is power. So hopefully this deep dive has given you a better understanding of this condition and maybe even some hope for the future.
I think that's a perfect place to end it. It's been a fascinating deep dive for sure. And for our listeners out there, thanks for joining us on this journey. Remember, this is just the beginning of your deep dive, and we encourage you to keep learning, keep asking questions, and keep advocating for your health.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Until next time.